All right. Well, I think we got that through. Thanks everybody for joining us today. We will be with you guys shortly with Shannon Booth of I'm sorry, where's my thing here? We'll be with you with Shannon Booth from Sweetwater Aquaponics. Do you have any last questions here in chat before we round up? I guess we got 1 minute left here. Sorry about the speed of that presentation. Tried to get through a lot for you guys. Hopefully you guys learned quite a bit. I tried to give you guys some stuff you could screenshot and use for later. All right, well, next up we have Shannon Booth from Sweetwater Aquaponics in South Africa. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome.
Thanks very much for having me, Stephen.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little about yourself and your facility down there in South Africa and what you guys have been doing. You guys have been doing all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah, Stephen, we were doing vegetables in aquaponics, basically pioneering in South Africa in aquaponics on a commercial level. And my business partner wanted to prove that it could be done commercially in South Africa. It had never been done on a large scale. So when I first met him, I was working on a small system at a backpackers, and that's how I met him. And he asked me if this could be done on a commercial scale, and I said to him I wasn't sure. I hadn't seen it on a commercial scale, so he said, "Well, let's try it." So he bought the property, a few properties up from where I was working, and he said, "Let's do this." And we pulled in the consultant and did the design for the system. And the other factor was he feels that the next world war is going to be over water. So especially in Africa, we've got heavy restrictions on water here. So it was about futuristic farming and chemical-free food. That was the initial concept. And we did that for about 2 years before the cannabis market opened up in South Africa for licensing. And I initially said to him that I thought it was a great idea because of the aquaponics and the style of growing and being chemical-free, growing medicine. I thought it was the only way to do cannabis medicinally. So he wasn't convinced initially. It took me about a month to convince him to do the application for the license. It's quite pricey. And we went for it. Unfortunately, we got it. When the SAPRA inspectors came to inspect our facility, they had never seen an aquaponic system before, so it was all new to them. So they didn't understand how we were going to grow medical cannabis in the system without soil. So that took a bit of coercing. But yeah, I think the intrigue of aquaponics gave us the opportunity to prove to them that we could grow cannabis in aquaponics. So they gratefully gave us the license, and we are now 2 years down the line. And it's been a seriously huge learning curve for me as the grower, going from vegetables to cannabis. And initially, I just thought we could put the plants into the system and go as we had with vegetables. Much to my dismay, that wasn't the case. Cannabis is a far more hungry plant than anything else we've grown in the systems. So the other consideration in aquaponics is that it's very driven by nitrogen. So we had to look at that and how we were going to counter that. And my few meetings with you, Stephen, you gave me some really good pointers on how to go about it. And I also doubled up my nitrification by doubling up the media beds in the systems. And that certainly has improved everything. The other issue that I haven't done the dual root zone system yet. You have advised me to do it. But the way that our systems are designed, I'm certainly going to try it from the DWCs, but in the media beds, our media beds are 1.2 by 1.2, the bell siphon in the middle, so I could probably only get 4 plants in a media bed on that kind of design. But I'm certainly going to try it. And the DWCs at the moment, I'm using the lettuce and spring onions to take off the nitrogen, and as you suggested, I should do that. So I'm actually going to leave the DWCs going, but I'd like to try a few of them with the dual root zone system. As you can see in this video, I'm getting 15 plants in a 1.2 by 1.2 media bed, and I've had issues, just general issues with the plants, and I felt that the resistance of the roots going through the stones was problematic. So I've enabled the roots with some cloth, as you're using cloth as well in the buckets, but I'm actually just putting it on the roots themselves, and that certainly helped. And also I've added a whole array of microbes into the system through Biodine, which I believe they call my clear pond in the States. But it's microbes. I'm using Biodine 401 and 501. So adding microbes for root development and growth, and also for cleaning up the excess fish feces, which has always been our biggest problem in our systems, because the DWCs is where the fish feces, the excrement ends up, and it lies on the bottom, and it starts to cause denitrification in the systems, which makes us have to lift up the rafts and vacuum the systems. That's with vegetables. With cannabis, we want the TDS to climb for flowering, so we don't want to disrupt the roots or the plants by lifting the rafts to clean out the bases. So I used Biodine this round for the first time. It was a 3-month grow, and I didn't do any vacuuming. And after we harvested, we pulled all the rafts up, and the remaining excrement from the fish was minimal compared to what I had prior to using Biodine. So those microbes are cleaning up tremendously. So that's the one thing that I've discovered. The nutrients, I'm finding that I did use a lot of kelp-based products, and once again, Stephen, you corrected me on that. I had my arsenic levels were way too high; they kept failing. But you know, I progressed from vegetables into the cannabis, and using the same methodology, and in lettuce and in cucumbers and vegetables, the plants don't accumulate heavy metals as cannabis does. So when I sent off my first test to the labs, the arsenic levels were through the roof, and I couldn't understand it. So I broke down everything that I was adding to the systems, everything that could leach into the systems. I discussed them with you as to what the problems could be, and immediately you told me it was a kelp-based product. I sent off everything for samples to see where it was coming from, and I also spoke to my reps about the kelp-based products that I was putting into the systems and the arsenic, and they flatly denied that it could be from the kelp base, and they actually said that they feel that the contamination was coming at the lab level where they were doing the tests, and somehow the arsenic was getting into there. But then you pointed me in the right direction, and since I've stopped adding any kelp-based products, I've got beautiful results. So thank you very much for that. The other problem with the dual root zone is that a lot of my plants are in Dutch buckets. So in that system, I can't actually put in another dual root zone bucket, because I'm already in a bucket. So I just wanted to discuss that with you at some point as to how I could do that. But I'm sure it can be done using the actual bucket that's in place. So by putting a piece of burlap at a certain point and then planting the plant, but I'm going to discuss it with you at a later stage. I've just done a big harvest now, just before November, and it was a very good crop. It could have been better, and I think that it could have been better due to light intensity. It was a winter crop, so I don't have the right lights for the winter yet, but by next season I will have, hopefully. But my summer grow is always exceptional, but my last summer grow in aquaponics was a failure because of the nutrition levels and I was feeling my way along, and it was a massive learning curve. I put plants straight into the DWCs, and I've seen why you don't do it, and you suggest that we don't do it. So yeah, it's been a seriously big learning curve, but I feel now that I've got a lot more confidence in my systems and understanding of the plant, but I still need to do the dual root zone, and I'm also going to do the masterclass course with you, Stephen. So I'll learn a great deal more there. So that is basically the background of where we are, and we do have offtakes to the foreign countries, but certainly the pandemic hasn't helped any of us. One of the biggest challenges for us in South Africa is water quality, and the other big challenge at the moment, well, for the last several years, has been electricity supply. So we're certainly looking at going solar, so that we can be more self-reliant, and water is obviously going to be a problem. Our water at the moment comes from an RO system from the coast, and we have to re-RO the water again twice to make sure it's clean enough to go into the systems. You know, going back to the arsenic scenario, we were actually informed that being a developing country, there's a lot of DDT still running off into the rivers from ages ago when they used DDT in farming. So they believed that DDT was going back into the sea through the rivers for the runoff, and that we were bringing it back through the RO machines from the sea and then putting it back into our systems. But that was one solution that we thought was one of the problems with arsenic, that it wasn't. It was a kelp-based products we were putting into the systems. The other thing that I've recently learned is the buffers. I mean, obviously in America and Canada, you're more advanced than we are. Aquaponics is still a very new grow method in Africa. We are the only aquaponics licensed facility in Africa, cannabis-wise. But no, I lost my track of thought there.
No worries. What type of fish are you raising?
I used rainbow trout for vegetables in one module, just as an experiment. We designed the fish house differently, so it had more aeration. It was a lot cooler than the tilapia. I use tilapia generally. I use Mozambique albino and red Nile tilapia. I found that the red Nile tilapia are more like a Rolls Royce of tilapia. They're aggressive eating fish. They're very active, so they're very good for the aquaponics. I found the Mozambique albinos, they're also redfish. They tend to leave a lot of floating feces, which for me it just prolongs everything. So the red Nile for me is the ultimate fish for aquaponics where we are at the moment. I found, as you said in your introduction, the rainbow trout are extremely sensitive, not so much to nutrients, but to load shedding in South Africa. The rainbow trout can only last for 5 minutes without water flow and oxygen, and I lost several batches because of that. So I found the tilapia a lot more hardy, and they can handle the pH imbalances. They can handle a lot more. They're a lot hardier for us. I have considered koi, but my experience with koi is that they seem to be a lot slower working. They're not as active as a tilapia, but that's in my own experience. I haven't tried the butterfly koi like you mentioned, just a normal koi. And the other consideration is catfish. My consultant's using catfish, and he's very happy with them. But I just, for me, they're a driver, and they're not a form of income either. We just swap them out when they get too big, and then they get culled, and we just replace them with younger fish. But yeah, we also have the indigenous people of South Africa. I find the Zimbabweans and the Malawians are very, very hungry for tilapia and freshwater fish, whereas the South African indigenous people, the Xhosas and the Zulus, they will eat more sea fish, and they frown at freshwater fish. So it's quite strange. So we don't have a market for tilapia, but we just consider them as a driver for our systems and our plants. But we change them out as they get too big. And we had 4 fish tanks in a module, and each fish tank at full capacity holds 22 kilograms of live weight. And we have an inner sump in our systems as well that I described to Stephen. We have a big sump that holds 5,000 liters, and then we have an inner sump which is elevated, which is a 2,500 liter sump. It's elevated on legs. So the water that comes back from the DWCs, which is depleted of nutrients, goes back to the inner sump, and then that water is clean, goes directly back to the fish tanks, and then the fish tank ammonia water goes down to the big inner sump. So it separates the dirty water from the clean water, which is quite innovative. I try to keep my systems as simple as possible. Our consultant is pushing more ideas onto us to mechanize certain filtrations and adding nano bubbles, tech, and different things. But I'm trying to keep it simple by using more microbes, and I'm also going to learn a lot more from Stephen on the masterclass as to how we're going to go forward more naturally on that. And what I was referring to, but then I lost my train of thought, was the buffers. We only at the moment are using hydroxides. I use magnesium, and I use calcium hydroxide and potassium hydroxide. And in Stephen's eyes, that's old school. And I'm now seeing that I need to be using the silicate, and I'm going over to those now. I'm just trying to, the calcium carbonate and the potassium silicate, I'm trying to see where I can actually get them in this country. We have enough issues getting hydroxides, so I'm going to try and source those and start using those. I did find my plants in aquaponics, being outdoor in a greenhouse system, very prone, and we're in a very, very windy province, so my plants do get smashed by the wind. And I'm now using silicone as a spray base every 3 weeks to 4 weeks, just to strengthen the plants from cloning. So that certainly has changed the health and the rigidity of my plants. That certainly helped me get this crop under the belt now as well. Going into summer now, I'm going to start planting again next week, all the aquaponics again. We've got 6 tunnels that I'm also planting in the ground. So I'm doing ground grow and aquaponics, and it's intriguing to see the difference in the flower, difference in the terpenes. The aquaponics terpenes are way supreme to the ground cannabis. But yeah, even the flower density varies. I find that the density of the flower in the ground is better than that in aquaponics, but I need to work on that, and I do believe it's because of lighting. And I'm referring to the flower that I produce now in a winter grow without added light. So yeah, it's also an extremely expensive game. Aquaponics, setting up the systems is expensive now. We've got to get the lights, and we're getting quotes for lights, and the quotes for lights are diabolical, but it's something that we have to look at if we want a consistent crop going throughout the year, through winter and through summer. So we're gearing up, and it's been a massive learning curve for myself and my partner, but extremely exciting, but more challenging than exciting at the moment. But I'm sure that we'll overcome our issues.
So what type of cultivars are you growing? You're growing all kinds of good ones.
Cultivars. Yeah, Stephen, also for us in South Africa, it's been very difficult for me to get genetics, and with the industry opening up, we have our own genetics here, but they're not the genetics that the world is looking for and is used to. And then when we import the genetics, I buy in a pack of seeds, but they don't come with phytosanitary certificates, and our off-takers require phytosanitary certificates. So it's problematic. I have actually imported one strain from Spain, that I imported that particular strain, Samango, because I'm working a lot with skunk number 1, and there's a lot of skunk in Samango. There's a Korean skunk in Samango. So my idea was to bring in the Samango with the phytosanitary and the import permit, and then breed the skunk number 1 to Samango to give me multiple lines, and then use that same phytosanitary for the strains. As long as I have a clean COA, I can export that product with phytosanitary. So that's the one strain that I had. Then the skunk number 1, I obtained from an illegal grow many years ago. Illegal grow that got bust, and one of the guys that was working there, he was an acquaintance of mine, and he got me a clone from that. And that skunk number 1 is the original skunk number 1 cut from the mother in the UK that my good friend Simon Spearing, who's a strain hunter with Greenhouse, he brought it in the 80s, and I was blessed with that clone, and I was a gatekeeper for that clone, and I've kept it for many years, and I kept it in hope that I would get into a medical facility and be able to expose it, which fortunately I have. So that's that, and then I'm also working on some in-house genetics, the slurry cane, and I've imported a whole array of genetics from the States and also from the UK. There's a guy on Instagram, his name's Blue Skies Vienna Skunk. He's also Blue Skies International. He's got a whole collection of old school genetics that he got from Old Timer 1, which he refers to in the UK. And you know, he did a big marketing push on Instagram, and I hooked onto it because of the skunk. I'm very much into the skunk strains, and I purchased some genetics from him, and I must say the genetics are seriously good, and I'm now going to breed with them, and I've got some males and some females. I've just popped a whole bunch of seeds from him now from his turpentine tickets. It's a whole bunch of hazes and skunk hazes that are mixed in there. So yeah, good for a hunt. And yeah, it's very, very exciting genetics. And I've also got a whole lot of genetics from old school Chronic, who's based in America as well. These I really believe in the smaller breeders, because they hold on to the gems. This is my own belief, that the smaller breeders hold on to the gems, and they keep them for themselves because they love them so much. And when they do decide to release them, they release them with a heavy heart, but also with joy. And I believe that Blue Skies and Old School Chronic are both in that same league. So I follow them closely. I work with them closely. I communicate with them a lot. I'm using their genetics now. I'm going to breed with their genetics. So that's very exciting. And there's some American breeder, Farmer Fly, as well. I've got some of his genetics, very difficult to come by. But it's exceptional genetics, I must say. They stand out genetics. And yeah, he's working. They call it working on fire. So they're doing some serious work, but I'm trying to tap more into them. But it's pretty closed there, but I'm working on that. And and then I've also got some of the jinx-proof genetics, which are very exciting, but I need to work carefully with them. They're very guarded as to how you expose their genetics. So yeah, I'm very excited about that. I'm also breeding a lot with some of their genetics and some ethos genetics as well. So yeah, my genetics are all over the place. It sounds pretty wild. It is pretty wild, but I'm very focused on skunk, and that's my main focus. But I also realize that we have to grow for the market. So I'm very open to growing for what the market wants. And I'm also said to you, Stephen, we long for genetics in Africa with phytosanitaries that we can use and export. So that's where we are on the genetics. I was also watching your preview before this, and you were talking about manganese and molybdenum. And I also just wanted to ask you about your additions, your lactic acid bacteria serums, your LABs. That's something that I've never considered. I mean, I do watch Chris, I watch KNF, and I watch him on Instagram, and I always, you know, it's intriguing to me, the stuff that he does, and the ferments that he makes. And I've always perceived that as a great thing to do in grow bags or in the ground, but in aquaponics, I thought, sure, that's really going to mess up microbes by adding in things like that. But I see that you're doing it, but in a different way. So I'm very intrigued as to how you do that. So that's going to be very interesting for me to learn that from you as well. Another product that I just wanted to mention whilst we're on is a product that I use a great deal. It's called Phytostim. I did mention it to you, Stephen. It's the moringa tree extract, moringa leaf tree extract, which they're making in South Africa now. And it's got 21 amino acids in it, and it increases photosynthesis tremendously. It's a wonderful product. And I did send you the label on it. And then also the insect frass, you also mentioned that. I'm using that in the ground for my plants in the ground. It's incredible the NPK that it has, and the carbon factor that it has is incredible. So I use that in my ground grow. The problem with the frass, the guy who's marketing it here in South Africa, the problem with it is that they can't extract the chitin because they want to make it into a liquid form, but they're having great difficulty doing that. So if you have any ideas on that, that would be a great help, because to use it as a foliar spray rather than as an uptake from the roots would be far more beneficial to me as an aquaponic grower than putting it in any other form. So I do a lot of foliar spray and feeding for my potassium uptake as well. I only use real RPM products, so no toxic pesticides, only RPM. And yeah, I truly believe that aquaponics accentuates terpenes and flavors tenfold than any other grow, and that excites me for the future of terpenes and terpene extraction for aquaponics, and also the chemical-free base that we grow on for medicinal purposes. We aren't allowed to do our own extraction in South Africa. We're only licensed to grow and export flower. All of our trim has to go to a lab. That's a licensed lab in Cape Town that can do our extracts for us. We're not allowed to do any of that. But that's something that we haven't achieved yet. That's in the processes of doing that first extract now to see what the results are. And in the same breath, we're doing a big test with the cannabis from Pondoland. Simon, the strain hunter, he lives up in Port St. John's in Pondoland, and it's about 6 hours drive from us. So we liaise all the time, and we now, the Pondoland cannabis has been growing in the community for hundreds of years, and it's been going. It's been their lifeline. It's been their only form of income for hundreds of years. And the South African police went in there with helicopters, and they sprayed all the valleys with glyphosate, and they sprayed glyphosate all over the cattle. They sprayed on the cattle and the rivers and over the homesteads. So it's been very problematic for the people living there, and it's been their only source of income. And now that the government's opened up licensing to white farmers, as they see black farmers, South Africa are up in arms because white farmers are being allocated licenses at vast expense, and the African communities are feeling left out. The problem is the understanding of licensing for the African communities, and the expense and the understanding of contamination. For them, it's never been a consideration. They grow hundreds and thousands of hectares of cannabis, all landrace cannabis that they don't even seed. It just seeds itself, and there's no mold, there's no metals. It's pure medicine, but it's still considered an illegal grow. So we're very busy working with government on streamlining that, and actually trying to make that illegal grow into a community-driven grow, where we can take thousands of tons of landrace cannabis and extract that landrace, which is clean and pure medicine, and export that to the rest of the world. So we're trying to do that at great difficulty and frustration because of the legality, and you've got GAP and GMP. There's none of that up on the land. So we're working on rural practices, rural collecting practices, teaching the indigenous farmers up there actually how to grow cannabis in a better way, take out the males. So, I mean, the fields there are just, they're mixed, just males and females on a par. So everything's heavily seeded. It needs to be controlled now and regulated, and they actually need to be taught. And the other problem is that they now realize
We lose him?
Yeah, I think he might have disconnected.
All right. Well, I'm sure he'll be back with us shortly. This is his Instagram, is _aquaponics. Again, they're Sweetwater Aquaponics out of South Africa. Hopefully he didn't get hit with load shedding or something. I see it's on the 30-minute mark. But they grow amazing aquaponic cannabis. They are the largest aquaponic cannabis producer currently in all of Africa. Yeah, it looks like he had some kind of connection issue. Hopefully he'll be back with us shortly.
It looks like he just rejoined. Thanks everyone for joining us. Appreciate your activity in chat. Don't forget to hit the like button.
sorry, I seem to have lost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome back, Shannon.
Internet and electricity can be tricky things in Africa, eh?
Yeah, very much so. I was just checking the load shedding. No, the lights are on. That'd be good. Sorry. So yeah, I was talking about the Condoland. Yeah, so you know, for us, it's extremely important for us for government to see the Pondoland grow as a medical grow. So what we've done now with Simon and Strain Hunter is that we've taken 50 kilograms and we've de-seeded that 50 kilograms and we sent it down to the lab. We've got a concession from government to do that. So now they're busy doing that extract, and the results of that, we're going to send that extract results to government to show them, because we've actually done some extracts on it before and it's beautiful. There's normally on an aquaponic COA, I get THC and CBG and maybe a little bit of CBD, but these are high THC plants. In Pondoland extract, you've got at least 5 or 6 cannabinoids that jump out at you straight away. It's just pure medicine. What I was saying before the cut off was that the Pondos now have seen the value in strains. They've always only used landrace and worked with landrace, and now they're getting some strains in there, and they're growing the strains. And of course, the Pondoland males are pollinating these strains, so they're getting blends of landrace now coming in with strains, so higher THC, because the landrace will only get you between 4 to 8% THC. 8 would be very high in the landrace, so we normally work on a 4% THC, so it's more like a hemp, and it grows like a hemp. It's a very thin plant with lots of plants. It makes up the bulk. So for us, it's extremely important for us to bring the indigenous community forward with us as we go into this industry, because they are the ones who've been living off this plant for generations, and now we come in now, and because it's so expensive to get the license and get the facility up to date, they can't afford to do that. So the government in South Africa is having to relook at this. But it's a challenge because it's so rural, and they're also thinking about putting in an extraction site into the area, into the rural areas to do that whole crop. So we are making inroads to get those hundreds of hectares extracted for those communities, and we will do it through our license. we put up our license for that in our application for our license to SAFA, which is the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority. With our application, we sent in our application to work with Upon the Land people to get their product to market as well. So that is part of our thinking, part of our processing going forward. It's a big thing for us. We also want to be working with sun warmers and witch doctors with their herbal remedies. So we've got some scaletium coming into the systems now. The guys that we work with at the labs are asking us to plant as much scaletium as we can. Stephen saw the scaletium we're working with. It's very good indigenous scaletium. So we're going to be looking at that as well, but that will go under centre pivots in a different area from the Karoo. So yeah, we're looking at medicinal things, but the cannabis for me is the biggest challenge in aquaponics. I see the shortfalls that I have, and yeah, I look forward to working with Stephen going forward in the future to get it to exactly where we need to be. But yeah, it's been a wonderful journey, and it's only going to get better from here. So I look forward to doing the masterclass course with you, Stephen, and learning a great more deal.
Some questions from chat. Somebody asked why there was a bell siphon on the Dutch buckets, or in the middle of the Dutch buckets. Could you talk about that a little bit?
About the Dutch buckets. So
yeah.
the Dutch.
Go ahead.
Okay, so each module we add 60 Dutch buckets to, and so where the water comes in from the media beds, it drains into the DWC, and as it comes into DWC, that's where the water is at its most nutritional. So then we've got submersible pumps in the DWC at that point that then pump water up to a pulsator, which would be that bucket that you just went past now, which is higher than the other buckets, so it feeds on gravity. That bucket has a dull siphon in it as well, as do the media beds. So as it gets to a point, the airlock breaks through to atmospheric pressure and the water drains out. So each pulsator will feed 10 buckets. So every 4 minutes, that bucket fills up, it releases, and it will feed those 10 buckets. So each 10 buckets has a pulsator, and we link them accordingly around the system, around the DWCs, and they work phenomenally well. And so it just pulsates. So that's called a pulsator because it just pulsates over the buckets. And basically the water just comes out of a nozzle, runs over the stone, over the roots, and goes into a pipe that leads back to the sun. So it runs over the roots, feeds in, and leads off. So for me to do the dual root zone in here, I have to put the burlap sort of halfway down. And I believe that it will work very well in the Dutch bucket system. So the Dutch buckets only contain 19 millimeter stone. There's nothing else in there but stone. And that's where I have to protect the roots. You know, putting the roots into cold stone and expecting the plant to grow, it works with tomatoes and cucumbers, but not with cannabis. They require a bit more attention than that. So, but as you can see in the pictures, they're very happy in there, and they're very happy in the media beds without the dual root zone. But I want to try the dual root zone to get better everything, the microbes on the different levels, as Stephen has suggested, and better terpenes. But yeah. So this was a winter grow. I also on your DWCs in the dual root zone. I was looking in your introduction as well. You've got those tunnel hoops of your DWC, because I was wondering how you support those big plants on top of those rafts, on top of the buckets, because they stand pretty high and they're obviously top heavy. I know that you said that the weight of the bucket anchors and the roots anchors as well, but with the wind factor we get here, they're going to blow over. So do you use those hoops to put up scrog netting, or are they just there to support the plants?
No, that's why they're there for scrogging, and for you can lean on them if you need to reach into the middle of the row or whatever without touching the plants.
Yeah. So I'm very interested to look at that, Steve, because my DWCs, I've got 4 of them in each module, and I could be using 2 of them put in the buckets like you do, and then using 2 of them to take off the nitrogen at flowering. So I will always have deep water to take nitrogen off, because we're always having nitrogen in the systems, as you know.
Yep. We had another question in chat. Can you process and sell the tilapia from your system in your country?
Yes, we can. Like I said, the South African indigenous people, they don't eat freshwater fish, but we have a lot of Malawians and Zimbabweans in South Africa now who are in townships mixing with our locals, and they are very hungry for those fish. And so we do sell them if they ask for them, but my consultant has a market where he slaughters them he's got a market for housewives for his fresh produce and tilapia fillets, which is going pretty well.
Nice. Do you have any interest in working with any South African genetics, that are from there, aside from the grow that you previously talked about, or have you done other experimentation with any Durbans? Someone asked in chat.
Yeah, I haven't actually done any growing with Durban poison. And I have a friend who's got a facility up in Johannesburg, and they're being patriotic. They're using the South African genetics for their grow. But yeah, I just feel for me right now, I need to be working with the strains that the international world are used to, so that it makes the offtake more accessible, easier to sell the product. If I come in with an African strain and they say, what is this? Even though it's got the THC, it might not have the right terpenes for them. So I just feel that I can confidently grow foreign strains for that market, because I'm only allowed to grow to export. We don't have access to local markets. So I've got to grow strains that the international market are used to and what they want at the moment. I am doing a lot of breeding, but I'm using international strains at the moment.
Awesome. Well, let's see what other questions we have from chat here. The bell siphon question. Let me see. What other questions do you guys have in chat for Shannon about? What other challenges have you found in growing in South Africa? What's the current landscape there, legal wise? Is recreational on the horizon, or is it still pretty far away?
Yeah, I'd say it's 2 to 3 years off. There's a lot of club models running at the moment. People are opening clubs with dispensaries, but they're not legal. But people are doing it anyway. They're pushing the boundaries. Some people are being arrested, some aren't. CBD is a way that people are trying to play with the market a bit. If you go into any grow shop or any cannabis-based store, you will find isolate or distillate that you can buy in pens, but not over the counter, sort of under the carpet store. But the recreational market is still very tight and very closed and very, very hot. The regulation is very tight in this country. So it's, but I have a lawyer friend who's working on it, and he tells me that we are, as soon as that we can get excited is in 2 years' time. We are looking at Israel. Israel is going to be the biggest recreational market opening up next year. I'm informed by my off-taker. I'm not sure, but I've been told that we need to be looking at strains for Israel. So that's what we're doing for that. Our off-takes at the moment are to Australia.
And
so,
a little bit more about Australia. A lot of people don't know that it's where a lot of the African stuff. I know a lot of the Zimbabwe offtake is in Australia as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. Most of the offtakes at the moment from South Africa are going to Australia. It's fascinating. I mean, Australia have legalized it in a few states, but they seem to be happy about importing the product. But also, with the globe being under the pandemic, people are battling financially. So cannabis is not a cheap product to purchase. So that's also working against us a bit at the moment, even though we're probably in one of the countries we can grow it the cheapest in the world because of our labor. Everything's just cheap in Africa. But yeah, and one of the biggest challenges is the climate, and especially in the Eastern Cape where we are. It's very dry, it's very windy. So aquaponics is good for that, but it has its challenges with other climatic conditions as well. But yeah, it's ongoing and it's very exciting, and I'm amazed to see how many people are actually growing cannabis aquaponically around the world. It's incredible to see. But no one like you, Stephen. No one's growing it like you yet.
Certainly nice to see the mix of living soil and aquaponics on your farm. I think a lot of people watching this are equally as passionate about both methods. So is there any, what have been some of the pest challenges that you've had to deal with in South Africa? That was another question we got in chat.
Yeah, I know the biggest challenges are now in spring. Caterpillars, American bollworm come in heavy, thrips come in heavy, aphids come in. I haven't introduced any predators yet. I've got natural predators running around the systems. I don't kill any predators. I don't use any toxins that kill predators. So I'm trying to bolster them in that way. My consultant has given me now a whole chart of insects I need to be looking at. So I'm going to be looking at that now going into the summer. But my biggest challenge is climate, more so than anything else. That really is my biggest challenge. So that's why a lot of people go indoor. You know, we're very much naturalists, so we want to stay outdoor, but we want to do the aquaponics. So I've just said to my partner, I really need to protect the plants now. So I'm just putting up heavy shade cloth all around the aquaponic systems to keep it as stable as I can for the plants, because the plants are growing beautifully. But every time the wind comes through, it really comes through, it smashes those plants and damages them and sets them back. It stresses them. So it affects everything. You know, the cannabis plant with any kind of resistance is not going to be happy. So that's what I need to do, is just keep up any kind of resistance for the grow.
We got another question in chat. How are you dealing with the higher temperatures and humidity? Is that causing any mold issues or other things like that?
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, we get a lot of humidity here because we're on the coast. We're at sea level. We're on the coast and I lie between two rivers. So I've got the sea in front of me and two rivers either side of me. So we always humid. The cloud cover is always around. The wind helps the humidity by blowing it, by drying it off a bit, but it's heavy. But the phytostim which I use, that moringa-based product, it really helps me a great deal. Because of the potassium and the amino acids on it, that helps a great deal. And I've also been told that I should be adding it to my water. It'll improve the health of the plants, the roots, and the fish. I haven't done it yet because it's quite an expensive product, but I'm going to start doing it now in the summer. My biggest fear now going into summer in aquaponics is Pythium. Every summer, Pythium comes in and it wipes out my entire crop. Not my cannabis crop, but my lettuce crop. Anything that's on a raft gets nailed by Pythium. The buckets are better, the media beds better, but I still use plants in the buckets and media beds. But oxygen, I've increased my oxygen levels a great deal for Pythium, and the biodine, I believe, will also help with the Pythium, but it remains to be seen. But oxygen is a big thing for Pythium. And yeah, your mixture, yeah, your lactic acid bacteria, that now, I saw that this evening. I took a picture of your recipe as well, just to get it. But I'm sure we'll go to your masterclass course. So I look forward to that, Steve.
Yeah, those are just a few things from it, but certainly, you know, increasing biodiversity of the microbes in there, and then just making sure the water doesn't get too hot can be another great way to help mitigate that a little bit.
Well, this is the other thing I need to be doing, is putting in heat exchangers for summer and winter and working in either way, because I've got no way to control my water temperature, and it's like a wild west at the moment. So yeah, I need to look at that now in summer.
We had another question in chat. Can you talk more about the moringa extract?
The moringa extract. Yeah, it's called phytostim, and it's basically an ethanol extract of the moringa leaf. So they mash up the leaf like they would for cocaine, and they would do the extract with ethanol and then run it through the evaporator as such. And the end product, it smells very rich. It smells medicinal. You can drink it. And they call it plant nutrition, and it just softens the plant. It's just wonderful stuff, and it increases photosynthesis and growth and doubles your yield. It makes your stems thick, your leaves very big, everything goes green. It's a wonderful, wonderful product. It's made locally, and I believe they're on a marketing spree now in Malaysia at an expo there. There's only two grows at the moment, and we're doing a bit of a marketing thing for it. But no, I'm not marketing it. I'm just doing it on Instagram because it does so well for my plants that I boost it. So I'm going to put it into my water now as well to see what difference that makes.
Awesome. What other things would you like people to know about South Africa? I think a lot of people don't really have, especially people that haven't been there, don't have really an idea what the country is like, especially the agricultural. Anything you want to kind of mention about Africa and the ag scene in general there?
Yeah, South Africa is going through big changes at the moment, politically, and in every aspect we're going through big changes, and you can see it just on the streets. I do worry about food supply in Africa. There are a lot of white South Africans leaving South Africa because of the politics and the uncertainty of South Africa. A lot of people are leaving and going to Canada and America and Mauritius and Australians, and they're leaving by the droves, which is worrying for the country. The brain drain is escalating at a rapid rate. So we have that challenge. We have Eskom, which is our power supply, which is extremely challenging for the country. We spend half of our time on load shedding. The whole climate change thing now, with the whole coal-powered power stations being phased out. Africa can only afford coal power stations. The nuclear one in Cape Town is leaking. The issues there. So water, politics, electricity, and stability in South Africa are the four big questions at the moment. There were the big riots in KwaZulu-Natal in July. A lot of foreigners were looking to invest in South Africa just prior to that. And when that happened, the investors ran for the hills. They weren't going to invest in a country that's so unstable. So I would say we're in for a few more years of instability, but it is probably the most beautiful country in the world. It's very diverse in people, in nature. Agriculturally, aquaponics is a very good thing for South Africa. Not for labor, because it takes away from labor because it doesn't require much labor, but for food security and sustainability is certainly one of the big things that we're looking at. And a lot of people are coming in from the States and investing in aquaponics in South Africa for food security. So that's rather positive that they're looking at that, because water is scarce, food is scarce, population is growing by the day. And yeah, everyone's just a bit worried in the country at the moment as to how we're going to get through the next couple of years and how it's going to end up. It's very volatile at the moment.
Well, how do people find out more about your farm and the school that you run? I know you guys also have some training stuff down there as well.
Yeah, it's not actually our school. It's an academy called Chiba, and it's run by a guy called Trenton, who was actually in the music industry before this. He's always been into cannabis, a wonderful guy. And they've opened up, there's 3 academies. There's 2 in Plettenberg Bay and there's 1 in Johannesburg. So, and we supported them tremendously. We've got 2 interns that are with them at the moment, and they're going to be finishing now in November, and then they're going to come join us here. So we asked the interns to go there to start the process, just to make it a formality for SAP and for government to see that we're actually using the system, so that we can certify the system, so that we get trainees coming from the event to come to our systems to learn aquaponics, not just cannabis, but medicinal plants and food as a broad-based education, and then they can go on further. But I'd like to keep those trainings to further our facility, because we are expanding as we go every year. I've got 5 aquaponics modules at the moment, and I've got 3 tunnels that we're going to be converting to aquaponics now in the new year. Wow. And then hopefully Stephen's going to come out in February or March, and he's going to help us with the expansion on that. So yeah, that's where we're going. We're going big.
All right. Well, is there anything else you wanted to tell everybody about before you go?
No, I just wanted to say thank you very much, Stephen, for doing this big event. It's huge that you're exposing aquaponics in such a big way internationally. It's wonderful. So I applaud you for that. And well done to you, really, for what you've done in aquaponics and for cannabis especially.
Thanks for joining us today, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's getting late there in South Africa, so I do appreciate you coming on.
No, well, thank you very much for having me, and I will stay on for the whole week, and I'm going to be on. I've put the whole weekend aside for this, so thank you very much. I'm going to learn a great deal from this. So thank you, Stephen. It's wonderful.
Well, thanks again, man. Take care.